Greetings. We wanted to do a brief show today focused on the Tesla Model Y and why now. So, this is the second issue is that we have some new updates from the website on what's going on with the Tesla Semi. So, that's our second sort of section, and then usually our quick health tips before we close out. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Please also note all of our Patreon supporters are much appreciated. Thank you. And subscribers are also appreciated. And we look forward to serving you better going forward on both fronts. Today, or a couple of hours ago, the Model Y was revealed. And the first part of our show is the Model Y now. And there are sort of a few reasons why this is happening. And it kind of makes sense, why it's occurring now with a little bit of analysis. So, as you all know, if you look at the specs, the Model Y is basically so the base version of the vehicle is coming in at $39,000 for 220 miles of range. This is higher than the 35K or $35,000 US for um, for a similar amount of range. And I think it's good that they're pricing it accordingly because there are more materials involved in this vehicle. Um, I have to admit that I almost want to rush to some conclusions before we cover the front end of the conversation. But in essence, I think it's good news that the vehicle is here. It's scheduled to arrive at the end of 20 or 2020 as a 2021 model. And as I glanced at it, I was surprised because I kept wondering if I was looking at the Porsche um, the Porsche SUV at a first glance has the same lines. So um, I was kind of shocked, surprised, and impressed that the car looks that good. It fits the style lines of the other vehicles in the Tesla lineup, but I think it takes a little bit of risk to embrace sort of a new direction for the shape of Tesla vehicles. So one, I think the car looks great. Two, um, I think it'll take its place and take away a lot of sales in the SUV space. As we've discussed in our previous show, SUVs represent 59% of sales for the major auto companies. So it's been my expectation that the model that the Model Y would arrive and treat me well. We also shared that I was actually surprised that the first Tesla was not an SUV. Instead of it was a sedan because the category is so important in terms of sales for everyone involved. So I think it's a great looking vehicle. The specs surprises included the fact that for the first 150 miles, the supercharger will get it done in 15 minutes. So it's clear that Tesla is taking serious the competition that's associated with uh, the competitive threat that pops up when it comes to how long it takes to charge. If Tesla is entering that 15-minute charging neighborhood, it really closes out room for competitors talking about 5 to 10 minutes of charging because the distance to getting a decent charge on the vehicle, if that's short and if that's where Tesla's going, I think it makes it tougher for competitors going forward. The, I would say that after reading everything I could about what's going on with this vehicle, the one thought that comes to mind very strong is a concept called OPM, or other people's money. So the big, I guess, surprise one would have to say is that there's a $2,500 reserve fee associated with the vehicle if you order now. And it's higher than the $1,000 that was requested for the Model 3. And I think it highlights the fact that Tesla really could use the cash and therefore the higher fee. Is this, I also have to admit that my initial reaction after hearing that the car would be introduced now is, oh no, Tesla's introducing another vehicle that will draw attention away from solving all the repair parts and other issues of the other cars, and so therefore become a distraction to the company. But when you consider the fact that Elon's working hard to avoid going back to the capital markets to collect cash, the fact that he's going for the OPM plan or other people's money in the form of more deposits that add to the cash hoard of Tesla, I think that this actually might be a smart slash good move and therefore help the company to, in essence, use its relationship with customers as a way to drive the cash necessary to sort of manage short and long-term issues. I was also intrigued by the $2,500 number because it wouldn't be a huge surprise to learn that, uh, if the Tesla margins are on the low end car are supposed to be in that 15% range, the amount of money being collected is the equivalent of what Tesla might earn on those vehicles anyway, before all the repair issues that might come up. So I think this is fascinating because basically Tesla gets its profit on the vehicle a year and a half in advance and can delay the arrival of that vehicle while it uses that cash to handle other issues prior to the car arriving. I guess I'd have to say there's some bad news for this vehicle. Number one is that clearly we've stated that because SUVs represent 59% of the cars purchased, and this is a great looking SUV, I think it's sad days for the Model 3 because you're going to see a lot of customers migrate away from the Model 3 towards it. The one sort of thing I'm wondering about from Tesla is where is the effort to figure out a path forward for Model 3 and Model S owners? Um, as you all know, previously the Model S typically gets priority, or previous owners get priority in the buying line for the new vehicles. And the biggest the big concern I had about the Model 3, excuse me, the Model Y, is that it would cannibalize sales of the other vehicles, causing many customers to delay purchases and therefore hurt the company while waiting on these new purchases. But with the higher reserve price, it's kind of nice because while they do uh, affect sales of the other vehicles, especially the Model 3, they don't necessarily miss out on profits while they do that. So I think this is kind of good news to see that vehicle in action and coming forward. So in general, I'd say it's positive. More cash for the company, a nice looking vehicle that's sitting out there for customers to reserve and pay the full profit for Tesla before the car arrives. Um, you know, it fills out the product line nicely. I think there's a lot of positives that are associated with the vehicle. Um, Again, my only worry is, will there be a lot of consumers that will say, I could have stepped into a Model 3 X or S and and you know uh, I'll wait. So the other thing that, based on how good this car is, um, unlike the relationship between the Model S and Model 3, it's my belief that this vehicle will completely destroy sales of the Model X, which have been slow over time. But I believe the doors on the Model X and some of the other features are liabilities and hassles that customers don't want to deal with. And so this may be the death knell for the Model X in my mind, because regular doors, along with a lower price, great performance, I mean, everything lines up for this to be a huge selling vehicle. One other note on SUVs that you guys should also note is the fact that SUVs are selling so well in the marketplace that many of the car companies are shutting down the low end of their car lines to allow the SUV sales business to boom. And, I think this is interesting. The one last note I would like to make is that Elon promised a Model 3 that had the ability to elevate with the air suspension to create more space during the winter months while you're driving at an elevated level. And I think this would sort of help bridge the gap for customers who want SUV features now, but you know, don't want to necessarily wait for or pay for the new car. So all in all, I'd say Model X, nice looking car. Um, all the performance parameters that Tesla offers blows everybody away. So I think that part is a no-brainer. I like the fact that they're charging 2,500 to reserve. It's a higher number. I thought maybe a little bit more would have been nice in my mind. 3,500 would have been great because I think that's exact number amount of profit that it would have on a car. So they would get all those profits in early so they can work on other issues without necessarily having to wait for that revenue to come in, even though that product is cannibalizing other sales for the company. So I I would say that it's a positive win-win on many fronts for Tesla, and probably more coverage and surprises to come as we learn more. The next thing we wanted to cover is sort of new developments that have come up on the Semi. One of our Patreon supporters slash viewers, Jim, pointed out that if you look at the Tesla website under Semi, there's new information provided regarding those who want to purchase the Semi but don't want to do the Founder Series purchase process, which includes, in essence, paying for the vehicle in advance. Those numbers suggest that Tesla would get an initial $5,000 deposit and then a confirmed wire of $20,000. And so I think this works out to $25,000 a truck to reserve your truck. Now, I find this kind of strange, interesting because um, Tesla definitely needs the cash, that's for sure. But I think it introduces some really sort of interesting questions that nobody has right now. Um, A, it's great to see some movement in terms of what's happening on the Semi. B, um, it's great to see Tesla has another sort of process for gaining more capital to use to grow the company and stabilize operations. Um, B or C, what I cannot figure out is how is the distribution of vehicles going to be handled? So we know that the Founder Series buyers will get their vehicles first, and then those not doing the Founder Series will have to get in line behind them. Um, but uh, there's been no description, at least publicly, of when those vehicles will arrive. A, and then B, who has priority? If you have companies, Pepsi and Walmart, etc., um, all have, they all have priority theoretically because they've paid the Founder Series price. But number one, who gets priority for the first vehicles coming out? Um, Number two, um, uh, what happens to the line of priority? As we know, most of the fleet sale tech companies like that are in a funny situation because they actually have, the fleet sales folks need a lot of vehicles all at the same time. So if that's the case, how do you prioritize who gets their fleet completed first? So clearly a bidding war has started to figure this out between the Founder Series as well as sort of the regular series of the Semi. But how this all plays out is going to be interesting. I wanted to thank you for saying hello online in Europe. I believe we typically reserve our hellos to the end of the show only to make sure that we don't mess up the process of follow-on viewers. Um, and so, bottom line is that I think this is a second move by Tesla to increase the amount of cash that's sitting on the balance sheet and that's available to stabilize operations. And I think that's good. Um, I'm just wondering, like, you know, how bad are you going to look if you are taking on all that cash you promised to truck sometime mid to latter part of this year, and nothing has been articulated. Um, Thanks for the comment, Alan, and I am rooting for Tesla as well. So, as you all know, we've been doing a series rolling out like what's going on with Tesla at the factory, and we're going to be including more factory photos at our Tesla Fan Insight Facebook page. And one of the last, we're nearing our review of all this, but one of the strangest questions that pops up is that you're having some of the wealthiest consumers in the world sitting in your parking lot for a half hour at a time on a regular basis. The malls know this is terrific because all of them become customers for all the malls that have charging facilities. But in the case of Tesla, it's almost an afterthought. Um, uh, it's almost an afterthought to provide services and food, etc., um, for those folks. And I think, as an experiment, Tesla should consider putting some kind of a food truck or two at the end of the parking lot for the supercharger folks, because I think that that place would sell out on a regular basis with 24-hour usage, and Tesla makes some money, the food truck folks make some money, and it makes the case for the fact that Tesla is probably leaving one, two, $300,000 a day worth of revenue on the table by not providing services to the regular customers, you know, uh, rolling through. Great question regarding, is it a crossover SUV or is it a car? Um, the answer that I would give to that is the fact that if you're just putting a shell on top, a SUV shell on top of the Model 3 frame, I think has to be considered a car still and not really a truck. So, but I think this is really a good setup because it minimizes the effort and time and cost to transition between the two vehicles. So, I think that's cool. They've been running all-wheel drive on all their vehicles for a long time, so I don't think there's a huge distinction between truck and car here. Um, I have to admit that what would be kind of fun to see from this Model Y introduction is a way to remove the rear end of the vehicle and it turns into a pickup truck would be kind of exciting, but then you'd have to put reinforcement in the frame, etc. But that's the near future coming that we're all looking forward to. Um, the So bottom line is that we went through the factory and found that there's a lot that can be done to optimize what Tesla's doing at the factory to increase revenues. Everything from selling more merchandise inside the store to providing food and other services, and really fleshing out the demographics of the folks that show up and what one could do to sort of maximize the opportunity of being exposed to those customers on a regular basis as they come in for supercharging, because it'd be great to see an offset of those coming for free supercharging being offset by them maybe purchasing food or other things that helps make up for the cost of that supercharging. Um, well, I'd like to thank Jerry and others for saying hello on here. I decided to sort of get up early in the 2 o'clock zone, East Coast time, as a way to sort of jump on the news that was coming through. Um, hmm, um, yeah, I think so. There's a number out there which is 300 miles of range. And the answer that the consumers are giving is if you give me 300 miles of range, I buy. If you don't, I'm not buying. So if you look at the specs, there are there's a 220 range, 250, and I believe a 280 range, and then a 300 range vehicle. And it's my expectation that the big seller will be that 300 mile range vehicle. I wanted to invite you guys to check out Electrotech. There's actually a description of a tuner in Los Angeles with parts for the Model 3 that add about 43 miles worth of range, which I think is awesome. And so if we could see a crossover with about 350 of range in it, I think range anxiety would really go down for a lot of consumers and push Tesla sales greatly. In fact, I would love to see them, um, yeah, yeah, thanks for the hammer time comment regarding 300-mile range being no big deal. But right now, in the current iteration, with the batteries coming from LG and other Korean manufacturers, everybody keeps announcing 250 in miles and delivering something in that 220 range, 200 range. So I think consumers are smart enough to wait for people to figure out what the real deal is and then follow up on that. Um, the final thing I wanted to cover today is what we usually cover, and that is the whole health discussion. I wanted to sort of switch gears just a little bit this time because I had a chance to meet a researcher who focuses on gout, and I wanted you guys to, if you look at our numbers and our demographics, we sort of start in the early 30s and go up to the 60s. Um, by the way, Jerry, the U.S. military is actively talking with Tesla about bringing products like this over, as well as doing electric recharging facilities out in the field so that they can not have to truck fuel out there. So excellent question. So what I wanted to focus on here is that there's an interesting phenomenon that you'll notice is that as you age, what you eat and drink may change in terms of how it affects your body. So specifically, alcohol beyond a certain age will turn to acid that actually is stored around your joints. And so um, I just think it's an interesting circumstance because um, things like I have a gentleman, I call him my shrimp king. And the reason is that at our local Safeway, they have bags of shrimp that were discounted. And so his strategy, he was to buy shrimp and put it to shrimp over salad as a way to lose weight and eat healthy. After about a month of doing this with 2 or 3 meals a week, he all of a sudden started having gout issues. And so it turns out that the eating of that shellfish will actually create acid that's being stored around his joints, creating the gout pain I described. So the bottom line is that you might be surprised that things you've eaten all of your life suddenly becoming the producer of acid that creates gout. So I wanted to encourage all of you to be mindful of this and sort of keep in mind in your eating habits. Um, I also wanted to note that I told you guys that the 20 leg lifts a day was the goal. Um, wow, thanks for the Daniel sardines. I didn't know about that, but I eat them, but maybe once a month, once every couple of months. Um, Also wanted to remind you guys about the 20 leg lifts a day as a way to strengthen your quad muscles to reduce knee issues. I've actually started wearing my leg weights for an hour a day, and it's like having a mini workout going on without necessarily all the effort of it. And I feel like I've noticed some benefits beyond just doing the 20 leg lifts a day that was recommended by the doctor. Woo! Our new sign is not cooperating, obviously. At any rate, I want to thank all of you for taking time out to join us. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Tschüss, macht's gut, au revoir, lehitrot, choda hafez, and we look forward to improving execution on all fronts with your assistance as subscribers and Patreon supporters. Um, wow, cool. Hammer time, thanks for the comment about that. We're all learning, and all the input you guys have is helpful and appreciated. Once again, have a great day. In Jamaica, we say, enough respect, walk good.